I've talked about the military conflict going on inside of Ukraine right now. Russia has invaded the country. I've got into that, but let's get into the financial side. Ukraine MEPs urge EU to help financial rescue, but they want sanctions. See, because they need to restrict those people, they need to make sure that they cannot get up off their knees. Let's look at this down here. The highlighted portion says the EU and the international financial organizations, that's the IMF, for those who aren't aware here. They should offer both a short-term and a long-term, and that will support the necessary reforms. Now, who's going to place these reforms? As I said, the IMF. IMF history with Ukraine leaders make cloud aid negotiations, and they are saying that previously the IMF had loaned money to the Ukraine, and this didn't work out so well for them because they weren't playing ball. You know, Malaysia did the same thing, China did the same thing. They're not playing ball with them, and they're really having a problem with that. And of course, because the IMF exists specifically to destroy the nations from within. They implant their people there, and they will collapse it. I'll get into that in a moment. And they're saying that basically in 2008 they froze loans to them because they weren't playing ball. The IMF, Christine Lagarde, said wide-ranging reforms. That's what they want. Now, when you say wide-ranging reforms, I hear a big destruction to sovereignty, because what they're going to do is they're going to place their people in the positions of power in the financial sector and all these different sectors, and the politicians there, and they're going to have their people where they want them. This is just like Mario Monti being in Italy. They had their man in power. So this is what they do. They don't need to control each and every individual in the government. They just have a few select people that they appoint, and they make their rules, and they don't necessarily even need to appoint the person. They could simply have someone on their team playing ball. And this prime minister said that he will probably be the most unpopular prime minister in the whole history, and he talks about how it would be a political kamikaze mission. But he's saying, I'll do anything to avoid a default. And in fact, he will, and he'll do so giving up the sovereignty of the nation, just as many others have. One interesting thing that obviously relates to the money GPS is that they have abandoned their dollar peg and letting their currency depreciate. So they need to do this. Mexico did this historically, and that basically allows for more investment because you weaken up the currency, and now it is more attractive for exports. But, what this will do to the people that are living there is obviously very damaging. That's what people aren't realizing. They're saying, hey, look, the country needs to get better, but who really gets that money? It's not the individual citizens. It's the banking sector, the financial sector, and all the other sectors, but never does that money ever trickle down to the people who really need it. That's what I'm talking about today. That's what I have to get into. I wrote about the IMF in my book here, and I'll just get into something very quick, okay? The IMF is actually a destructive force, according to Joseph Stiglitz in his book Globalization and Its Discontents. For those who haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. I would say that this is an excellent book. Sure, I mean, it doesn't really get into too much detail, but if you want to know about the IMF and their strategies or schemes, then this is the book. You need to read it. So he says they talked about Indonesia. They were basically forced to take out a loan from the IMF. They had no choice. They were pressured by their politicians, and they pressured, as I just said, pressured into a scenario that claims they would default on their loans, and then they preach a catastrophic result of that. What did I just read in the previous article? That they will do anything to prevent default on their loans, and then they push that and push that and push that. Once they're indebted, the IMF can dictate the policies in the country. Stiglitz also said that unfortunately, this loan bailed out the bondholders instead of the poor people in Indonesia. So, could there be some major financial investment in the Ukraine that we're not aware of, or perhaps we are aware of? So all I want to say is that the IMF is not there to help anybody out. That's pretty obvious. The IMF is there to collapse the economy from within, to pull it down, to drag it down, and to basically watch as it burns. That's what they do. If you want to know more about my book, head over to Amazon. I put the look inside feature. You can flip on through that and take a look. Perhaps you'll learn a thing or two on there. And I just wanted to say hello to all the new subscribers and thank you all for all the comments I've been getting, the emails, and all sorts of things like that. Thank you all, and I'll talk to you soon.